Calistoga.
Can't afford a down payment on a home? Tired of renting? Do you and your family want a place to finally call your own? We'd like to tell you about an exciting home ownership opportunity through Burbank Housing. Catalina Townhomes is a 60-home community in an emerging neighborhood located less than a mile from downtown Santa Rosa and the Santa Rosa Marketplace. Catalina Townhomes is available to buyers who have not owned a home in the past 3 years, have good credit, steady income, and a desire to build a home and a community. Burbank Housing works with owners on the construction of their 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, so the homeowner's sweat equity counts as a $20,000 down payment. A lower fixed monthly payment means that you can predict your housing cost starting as low as $1,450 a month. Come discover Catalina Townhomes and everything our location has to offer. For applications and more information, visit www.catalinatownhomes.com or call us at 707-526-9782.
The Bilingual Broadcasting Foundation, the nonprofit governing body of KBBF Radio, is searching for a highly qualified person to assume the position of general manager. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. Please share this information widely. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website, once again, at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. The deadline for submitting applications is May 31st, 2015.
El sol brilla y el aire fluye con buena información a través de la frecuencia modulada de KBBF 89.1.
All right. Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. We're going to get started in just a moment here. All right. Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, and this is on KBBF 89.1 FM Calistoga. The Queer Life Radio Show, which is LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews here on KBBF 89.1 FM Calistoga. I am your host, Kaiya Kramer, and this show airs live every Friday night, 6 to 8 p.m. in the San Francisco Bay Area, reaching all the way up to Redding and down to the South Bay Area. We are live every Friday night, and this replays every Tuesday night from 9 to 11 p.m. on KBBF 89.1 FM, and is syndicated every Wednesday night, 6 to 8 p.m. on KWTF 88.1 FM Bodega Bay. All episodes are streamed live from the studio via Google Hangouts on Air, which you can watch on thequeerlife.org. TheQueerLife.org has an archive of every single episode, links to all news, topics mentioned, descriptions, and info for all guests interviewed, access to Trans Atheist Podcast and Lesbianist Podcast, exclusive podcasts from the Queer Life family, and support pages for crisis hotlines and access to mental health professionals for those who are absolutely in need. Please like us on Facebook, facebook.com/thequeerlife. Follow us on Twitter @thequeerlife. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/thequeerliferadio. Disclaimer, what you hear on the show should not be taken as strict legal or medical advice. Please use your own discretion and check with a lawyer or doctor to directly address your legal or medical needs. If you are enjoying this program or any other programming on KBBF, visit kbbf-fm.org and hit the donate button. All your donations are greatly appreciated. Again, I am your host, Kaiya Kramer, and you are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show. All right, everybody, that is our little theme music opening for the Queer Life Radio Show. Keep on here on KBBF 89.1 FM. Like I said, my name is Kaiya Kramer. I am your host for this evening, unless, of course, you're listening to this on the podcast. Yes, I said podcast because the Queer Life Radio Show is now on iTunes and Stitcher and all the other podcasting type methods that you try to get, because we're not all locked into an Apple ecosystem now, are we? Well, no, we used to all be. I know a lot of people out there saying, well, I don't want any smartphones or dumb phones or whatever the heck. Anyway, without much further ado, I want to dive into tonight's episode. And I just want to make mention, if you have any questions at any point of this show, you can feel free to tweet us at The Queer Life. I'm monitoring it via Hootsuite, which is a social media platform to monitor Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all the above, kind of in one beautiful interface. Yes, I am a nerd. And yes, I will continue talking about nerdery. I'm not sure if that's really a word, but I'm just going to go with it. And I see a tweet here from Paulina Angel 82 at The Queer Life. I'm calling in gay to work tonight. I got the fever to live the queer life with the beautiful at This Is Kaiya XOXO. Thanks very much, Paulina. Paulina runs Trans Role Models, which is a huge Facebook group with over 5,000 active members. Some pretty incredible stuff going on by a lot of big movers and shakers in the world. We've actually interviewed her on this show as well. You can find her interview and more on thequeerlife.org. Like I said, this is episode 42. We're going to be calling in gay to work. Yes, I said calling in gay to work this weekend on the Queer Life Radio Show. Kaiya Kramer shares what we'll be covering what the next big thing in the gay movement is. The Indiana Religious Freedom Law, another transgender woman killed in the United States. Why conversion therapy is so bad. A few words about Jeb Bush and gay marriage. A professor releasing data about polls and their findings. Raising the question of whether women should have testosterone level tests. And finally, calling in gay to work, because we're all sick, right? And I'm actually going to start off the episode by bringing in my inspiration for tonight's episode of the Queer Life Radio Show, which, like I said, you can watch live. Yes, I said watch on thequeerlife.org. Or you can just go to youtube.com/thequeerliferadio. If you have the ability to watch YouTube, you have the ability to watch The Queer Life. what are you waiting for? We're all going to be calling in gay for work tonight, so I suggest you get out your popcorn and enjoy the show. I know that I'm extremely excited to share some of the articles I've got lined up for you tonight. And as I've said previously before, and if you've been listening to this show, you know a little bit about myself. I am a trans woman of color, and I present to you this perspective because, well, first off, the show is called Perspectives, but to show you that this is coming from a trans voice, and trans voices are being given a bigger and bigger platform throughout the country. I'm speaking about the United States. If you are one of our international listeners, which we do have, thanks to the interwebs, I mean the internet, and what's so incredible about this is we started here on KBBF 89.1 FM Calistoga, which is in Sonoma County, an hour north of San Francisco. Yes, I know it is kind of like the bastion of evil. I mean, gayness. I mean, progress and people's rights. But it's KBBF reaches an audience of up to 5 million people. We've got a big antenna up on top of Mount St. Helena, and so it's a huge platform, a platform developed in the 60s by Kennedy money and movement to create the first bilingual radio station in the nation. This is an incredible organization to be a part of, one that I'm extremely grateful for. And if you are enjoying this program or any other programming on this station, visit kbbf-fm.org and hit the donate button. You know, it's super cheap. Just go in, got a couple bucks, you know, it's like, hey, are you going to buy yourself something new on Amazon? You should probably stop buying so much stuff and doing your Amazon therapy. Well, I can't stop you from doing that. But, you know, just pretend like making a donation to KBBF is like an Amazon Prime shipping opportunity to continue to have more great programming on this fine radio establishment. I also want to mention as well, in addition to, we are on KWTF, 88.1 FM Bodega Bay, which is every Wednesday night from 6 to 8 p.m. So we are on there too. So entering all the terrestrial waves of all different kinds. But anyways, this is episode 42 of the Queer Life Radio Show. We're calling into work tonight, gay into work. And this is an article from Shaughnessy Ferro on mentalfloss.com. The time Swedes called in gay to work. Psychiatry has not always been kind to people whose sexuality veers from the societal norm. Homosexuality was considered a mental illness in many countries as late as the mid-20th century. For those of you that can't count that well, I know I can't. The 20th century was 1900 to 2000. We are in the 21st century. That's like 20 plus 1. Okay, I'm getting a little complicated here. Homosexuality was considered a mental illness in many countries as late as the mid-20th century, as in 1950. It was not classified as an outright crime. Yes, being homosexual, being gay, or any of the kind of associated activities that go with that, were considered an outright crime. You could be imprisoned for being gay. Yeah, it's not about having a gay pride parade. It's about people even sniffing the gay in you, as if gay has a smell. It probably smells very nice and probably a nice cologne, very high end. No, I'm just kidding. But even Sweden. So a lot of us say, well, these Nordic countries have a whole bunch of rights and are very progressive and communist and all that kind of stuff. But even Sweden, that Scandinavian bastion of openness and equality, identified being gay as a disorder as late as 1979. Yeah, you heard me. I said it. 1979. That year, a group of Swedes took advantage of the legal framework that being gay, an illness, was an illness and called in sick to work, claiming their homosexuality as the reason. So I guess I can call in work, hey, sorry, can't come into work today, still gay. I mean, this article goes on. One woman from the southern province of Småland, Devon, which I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing incorrectly, managed to get Social Security benefits for calling in gay. So a lot of you out there who might still be listening and think, all right, well, what if being gay was a sickness? A lot of that is changing. The American Psychological Association has removed the term disorder from being gay, being homosexual. And for that matter, also being transgender is not gay, and it's not considered disorder, and it's not mental illness. It's just being different, having a different sexual orientation, or having a different gender identity. It's just different. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. And a lot of people out there, I'm sure, are still saying, well, it is a sickness. You need to be cured through whatever means necessary. There's probably, I'm sure somebody out there is working on a pill to get, remove the gay from you. But calling in gay was a part of a larger protest from the RFSL, the Swedish Federation for Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Rights. Sweden decriminalized homosexuality in 1944, but according to the National Board of Health and Welfare, which develops health standards, it was still a disease. Yes, they said homosexuality was still a disease. Therefore, you could call in sick to work and take leave. As a bit of context, the American Psychiatric Association announced that it would no longer consider homosexuality a mental disorder in 1973, though it continued to use, quote, sexual orientation disturbance to categorize individuals who felt distressed by their sexual orientation, among other odd disorders. Fed up with the lack of traction it was gaining through traditional letter and phone campaigns, RFSL plans to occupy the National Board building as a demonstration against pathologizing gayness. On August 29th, during the middle of Stockholm's, quote, Homosexual Liberation Week, later called Stockholm Pride, RFSL protesters gathered to block the stairs of the National Board building, chanting and waving banners. Barbara Westerholm, the newly installed Director General of the National Board, eventually came and sat with the protesters and became amenable to their cause. In late October of 1979, the National Board declassified homosexuality as a disease, making Sweden the first European country to do so. 1979, Sweden was the first country to declassify homosexuality as a disease. First European country, that is. Needless to say, not all countries have caught up. It wasn't until 2014 that a World Health Organization panel concluded that there is no scientific basis for mental disorders specific to gay people, and the American Psychiatric Association's treatment of transgender people remains controversial. Because recently within the American Psychological Association, the APA, they came out with a new version of the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, the DSM-5, as opposed to the previous version called the DSM-4. It's kind of like Star Wars movies, Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3, Episode 4. We try not to remember certain aspects of Episode 1. I mean, I'm a little bit veering off here. But in the DSM-5, as I said previously, being transgender is not considered a disorder. It was previously noted as gender identity disorder. It is now being called gender dysphoria. Dysphoria simply meaning, and let me pull it up on my little handy-dandy Mac dictionary program. Dysphoria, let's pull it up here. Dysphoria, noun, psychiatry, a state of unease or generalized dissatisfaction with life. The opposite of euphoria. So having gender dysphoria, a state of unease about your gender, it's actually quite simple. You just have unease about the gender that you're assigned at birth. And like I said, we say assigned at birth because we're all assigned a gender at birth. It's like being given an assignment for school. You're given it. And when a doctor, pulls you out screaming and bloody, and your mom's like, about to pass out from just having given birth to a baby, your life, the doctor says, congratulations, ma'am, you have a young, new, strapping son. Or congratulations, you have a beautiful daughter. Or a beautiful baby boy, or whatever, but it's all written up on paperwork that within minutes of you being born, they declare the time and you have just entered society. Congratulations. Welcome to the new world. No wonder you're screaming. No. But anyhow, that's part of culture and understanding. Have you noticed that a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of you out there are parents, and a lot of people walk up to, and they look into your carriage and say, wow, oh, is it a boy or a girl? And honestly, if it's a stranger, isn't any business of theirs. I mean, that's getting a little bit private, but is it such a open thing to ask people what gender their baby is? Would it matter if their baby was a boy or a girl? A lot of people say, well, people are just being nice and they like babies. That's true. A lot of people do like babies. People who don't have babies, tend to not know what it's like to have to wake up at 3 a.m. and take care of your screaming child. I know a lot of you parents out there are probably nodding your heads right now, but it's already a questioning of their gender identity as a baby. And what if you weren't to tell them what the gender of your baby was, and you changed the color of their clothes the baby's clothes every day, and you didn't tell anybody? Well, people would start assigning male traits to the baby, and this was actually an experiment done not too long ago. This group of parents didn't let anybody know, and all of a sudden, all these other strangers and friends and families, oh, well, this baby is clearly a strong baby boy, a handsome young baby boy. And then it turns out to be a baby girl. But it's projection of our own thoughts and feelings concerning traits of masculinization and feminization as imposed upon us by society. Yes, I'm getting a little verbose here, but again, this is Kaiya Kramer reporting from the Queer Life Radio Show here on KBBF 89.1 FM Calistoga. Next article we have on the list, written by Lauren Hanson on theweek.com. The next big fight for gay rights will be won by big business. The rapid expansion of gay rights and LGBT acceptance in the United States is a remarkable story, and one that's still unfolding. If you think you know how it ends, you most certainly don't. As federal courts and state and local governments have opened the door to same-sex marriage, for example, state legislatures and Republican-controlled capitals have been responding with measures to limit gay rights, squash same-sex marriage, and take away local control over LGBT anti-discrimination policies. This article comes out 45 years after the famous Stonewall riots in New York, and that's where a whole bunch of trans people and drag queens, yes, there are differences, I'll get into that later, and gay men and lesbian women got together and fought the police and said, no, we are allowed to be queer, and it's not infringing on any of your rights, and it still isn't. This article continues to go on to talk about the religious freedom laws passed in 2 states we have mentioned, in fact, on this show, Indiana and Arkansas. Indiana's Governor Mike Pence, Republican, noticed big companies leaving Indiana and thus added LGBT protections. This is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the RFRA, if you like acronyms. And the Religious Freedom Restoration Act postulated that any business could say, hey, we don't want to serve you if it is against our own religious rights. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, if it goes against somebody's religion, should we be forcing somebody to serve somebody they don't want to? I see those signs in a lot of businesses saying no shirts, no shoes, no service. Is being gay the same thing, though? And is gay money any less valuable than straight money? And why should it be a big deal? And now Mike Pence at first came out saying that it wasn't, I keep using the word came out, he's straight, no. But he came out as saying that, this is not an anti-LGBT discrimination law, but when, big LGBT lawyers started looking at it, they're like, wait, actually, this allows people to say, hey, businesses don't have to serve you if you're gay. And the deputy governor actually came out, and he was actually more honest about it. He said, if you are a caterer and you do not want to cater for a gay wedding, you can say, hey, I don't want to cater for your gay wedding because it violates my religious beliefs. But a lot of other people don't realize that this can limit a lot of other kinds of discrimination. It can say if and this is not just for Christians. Like say a Buddhist organization, highly doubtful that they would do anything, but a Buddhist organization would say, hey, I don't want to have a Judeo-Christian person in here because there's been a long history of violence, as in referencing the Crusades. I'm just making leaps here, but you can see the point. This can work for Muslims against Christians because of certain parts of what the Quran says. I'm not trying to get into a religious debate here. I'm just giving you examples. There's been what's happened is big companies like Apple, Subaru, the NCAA, NASCAR, Salesforce, Yahoo, a lot of these huge corporations, to name a few that you've heard of. I'm sure you've heard of Apple. I mean, Steve Jobs, iPhone, those things that a lot of people spend a lot of money for. Anyway, those companies have made travel bans to Indiana because they do not agree with these discrimination laws, with the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And so Governor Mike Pence noticed that these big companies are leaving Indiana, and so he added LGBT protections, saying, well, while you have the right to operate your business according to religion, it does not allow you to discriminate against LGBT, which is actually the first in Indiana when LGBT protections were put into law, which is kind of incredible. But the even more incredible point about all this is the fact that big business has made a move saying that it makes financial sense for us to be LGBT friendly and support LGBT because, I mean, let's be honest here, a lot of your employees and customers are probably LGBT. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, Republican as well, made similar LGBT friendly changes to their religious freedom bill. Arkansas, they to have an LGBT organization, but they also have business too, and money makes the world go round. Texas, more than 100 businesses signed the founding pledge of a new group called Texas Competes, affirming that, quote, in order for Texas businesses to compete for top talent, we must have workplaces and communities that are diverse and welcoming for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. Dallas Mavericks owner in Texas as well, Mark Cuban, launched a campaign, Texas Wins, in favor of these anti-discrimination laws. So there's a lot of movement happening in terms of business, more so on business and politics. As gay rights marches forward in America, religious conservatives are taking a stand. Principled or bigoted, depending on your point of view. Big business, a second pillar of the Republican coalition, is taking a stand too. However, and that's where things get interesting. If the business community, or shall we say the job creators, have decided that fighting for gay rights is good for business, that puts the Republican Party in a tough spot. Do you alienate the social conservative part of your party that's fighting for what they believe to be their religious freedoms, or do you pick a fight with the free enterprise faction that believes discriminating against gay and transgender people hurts their recruitment efforts, their brand, and their bottom line? Do you side with the church or the chamber? I leave that question to you, our listeners. I am Kaiya Kramer, your host for the Queer Life Radio Show here. We are going to take a quick, short break here. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and we will be back for more LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. Thanks so much. We'll be back shortly.
Estás escuchando KBBF Radio Colectiva, gente de la calle, tejiendo voces para una voz, la voz de nuestra comunidad.
The Bilingual Broadcasting Foundation, the nonprofit governing body of KBBF Radio, is searching for a highly qualified person to assume the position of general manager. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. Please share this information widely. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website, once again, at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. The deadline for submitting applications is May 31st, 2015.
El sol brilla y el aire fluye con buena información a través de la frecuencia modulada de KBBF 89.1.
All right, hello everybody. You are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. I am your host, Kaiya Kramer, and this is episode 42. We're calling in gay to work tonight and listening to the Queer Life Radio Show here on KBBF 89.1 FM Calistoga. Just talked about the next big fight for gay rights will be won by big business. Upcoming right now, we are going to be, I'm going to be reading to you about Brian Fung on WashingtonPost.com writes, the House just passed a bill about space mining. For as long as we've existed, humans have looked up at the stars and wondered what is up there, who is out there. Now to that list of questions we can add, and can I have it? The United States has already shown its penchant for claiming ownership of space-based things. There are not one, not two, but 6 U.S. flags on the moon. And in any case, any of you other nations start getting ideas. Never mind that the flags have all faded to a stateless white by now. So it only makes sense that American lawmakers would seek to guarantee property rights for U.S. space corporations under the Space Act. Yes, I said the Space Act as an outside space, or outer space, excuse me, I'm not very scientific right now, which just passed the House. Businesses that do asteroid mining will be able to keep whatever they dig up. Any asteroid resources obtained in outer space are the property of the entity that obtained such resources, which shall be entitled to all property rights thereto, consistent with applicable provisions of federal law. Who should regulate commercial space activity and what rules should apply? These are the questions that are being asked. If anybody has seen the James Cameron film Pandora, what's it called? Avatar, excuse me, Pandora is the name of the planet. A huge corporation goes to get a rare mineral called unobtainium. Yes, they seriously called it unobtainium because it's unobtainable. Anyway, I really like the graphics. They have pretty computer-generated CGI. Yeah. Quote, the bill preserves the FAA's ability to regulate commercial human spaceflight in order to protect the uninvolved public, national security, public health, and safety. Safety of property and foreign policy. The House Science Committee said in a release, it also preserves the FAA's ability to regulate spaceflight participants and crew safety as a result of an accident or unplanned event, which does happen with space travel because it's kind of crazy powerful technology with huge explosive thrusters on our rocket ships, unless of course we do the belt project, which allows us to have motorized motors system that climbs along belts, kind of like a tram. Yes, you'll eventually be able to take a tram up to space if, here comes James Cameron again. James Cameron is funding said project. Space law experts believe that this exclusive territory could be very, very big. That's because under the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, yes, in 1967 we had an Outer Space Treaty, crewed vehicles are entitled to operate inside a 125-mile non-interference zone designed to keep astronauts safe. Joanne Gabrinowitz, the former editor of the Journal of Space Law, told Harvard Political Review, if the same standard were applied to commercial space operations on lunar or other extraterrestrial bodies, then Bigelow could become a leader in the first major land rush of outer space. The article is from WashingtonPost.com, written by Brian Fung. The House just passed a bill about space mining, and this affects probably not very many of us here. From Lauren Smiley, she writes on Medium.com, they want to kick you out and make you leave your home state. That's not right. This is about the Indiana Religious Freedom Restoration Act laws being enacted, and this journalist here went ahead and asked a couple people about a couple queer identified people, a gay man and a young queer woman, about how they felt about this new Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And I pulled a couple quotes from that article for you. Brett is a 24-year-old native of Indiana. He works at a youth theater in Fort Wayne, Indiana's second largest city in the northeastern part of the state. Quote, but when the law got passed, I'm like, what am I doing here? I was really active in phone banking around gay marriage, but do I have another campaign in me? Indiana is wishy-washy. Why am I here when I could be in an accepting state? That was the biggest struggle. Do I stay or do I go now? But then I think that's what they want to happen. They want to kick you out and make you leave your home state. That's not right. I should feel safe in my own state. Now, Brett here is he's a young gay man, and being in Fort Wayne, Indiana's second largest city, it raises some questions. As a gay man, should he stay in Indiana? Should we that raises questions like, should gay people leave states that don't want them there? And I know some people say, well, if people don't want them there, they should leave. But should that be put into law, though? Should states say, hey, this is an anti-gay state, all you queer identified people should be going to California? But then California is already pretty crowded and big as it is. But isn't what the part of what makes the United States so great our diversity, our freedom of belief, our kind of come one, come all, come to the United States, and we can all join this great and glorious country and build a better world? Or should we segregate ourselves even further? If we want to segregate ourselves, why did we do the anti-desegregation laws in the 50s and 60s? When Lyndon B. Johnson in 64 released all those civil rights laws, which enacted all the stuff that happened about how KBBF became the first bilingual radio station in the nation. It's, to use a term that the conservative right uses, it's a slippery slope. If we start segregating more and more, it could lead to more people being pushed out of certain places. Should people be pushed out of certain places because they live their lives in such a way that others don't agree with according to certain religious beliefs? That's part of the question being asked here. The second person being interviewed in this article here is Emily. She's a 19-year-old music major at Indiana University in Bloomington who identifies as queer. She writes on Facebook, unfortunately, I didn't feel comfortable coming out to a small handful of students here because I was hearing the classic quote, "Sorry, that's just not by belief." Thing from them. So when they'd express all this disgust towards gay people, they were unknowingly attacking me, someone who they figured was straight, which really hurts. Actually, after coming out to a close friend who I no longer talk to, she at first was silent and seemingly accepting. But months later, when I brought it up again, she started saying how this friend of hers had been cured by prayer and legitimately felt his sexual orientation change from gay to straight. And that was pretty much my cue to look her in the eye and be like, okay, do you think I would be better off straight? To which she said yes. Do you believe that through the power of prayer, you can be cured of being gay, as if you can pray the gay away? I know that is kind of a Dr. Seuss approach to getting rid of homosexual feelings, but it's not so simple. And the American Psychological Association has actually deemed conversion therapy or reparative therapy, which through typically religious means tries to convince gay men or lesbian women or transgender men or women that it's all stuff that's just related to their childhood, or that they have some kind of this came up through being reared the wrong way. And it's been deemed by the American Psychological Association that reparative therapy or conversion therapy is actually harmful and has contributed to a large number of queer suicides, of which even the conversions that they made, the gay men that converted back to quote-unquote being straight, ended up coming out and saying, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm actually gay, and that will never change. Next article we have on the list here is from Nillan Dennison from planettransgender.com. Nillan writes, from Debbie Fox to Rachel Burke, the importance of mainstream media reporting on trans suicides. Previously on the show, we have thrown out statistics such as attempted suicide rates. In the United States, attempted suicide rates for anybody, queer identified, straight identified, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, straights, cisgender, doesn't matter who, everybody, the attempted suicide rates is less than 2%. It's about less than 1.5% of people, no matter who you are, straight or gay, have attempted suicide in the United States. The United States has a couple billion people in it, so that's maybe less than a billion. Okay, now I'm not making stuff up. But anyway, the statistic for attempted suicide in the United States for LGBT people, for queer people, is 20%. That is 1 in 5 LGBT identified people will have attempted suicide. That's kind of a high number. Let's go even further, unfortunately. The attempted suicide rates for people who identify as transgender was recently reported to be 47%. That's nearly half, nearly 1 out of every 2 transgender people will have attempted suicide in their own life. And I can speak from my own perspective here as a trans woman that I've had a time when I did try to attempt suicide. That is long gone now. I have turned a lot of things around in my life, but it was as a result of all the wonderful support I had around me. And this is a good moment to mention that there is a lot of support out there for you. Again, I am a trans woman of color and I'm running a radio show. You know, times have certainly changed. But for those of you listening here in Sonoma County, I don't think, well, that doesn't happen here in Sonoma County. At the transgender support group that I attend here in Sonoma County, Transgender North Bay, we ran a poll, and of the 130 trans people who responded, 70% said that they had attempted suicide here in Sonoma County. That is Sonoma County, man. We are like progressive. We are hippie. We are cool. We have Sebastopol, man. Like we got Bodega Bay. We have all the wine that one could drink to one's heart's content. Great restaurants, great ambience, great weather, and 70% of us are attempting suicide. So I'm just giving you the information here. On this article here from planettransgender.com, which is actually an organization that has contributed to the Queer Life radio show. You can actually listen to a couple interviews of ours of Claire Renee Kohner, a writer and journalist on planettransgender.com, and the editor Kelly Busey from planettransgender.com. You can go to thequeerlife.org and watch those previous episodes. From planettransgender.com, they say on this, Lexi Kahn's article, Recent Spate of Transgender Suicides, an Actual Increase or More Awareness, really got me thinking about how problematic tracking suicide is. Lexi is right. Mainstream media is extremely selective in regards to which suicides are deemed to be newsworthy enough. I feel that this is especially true of trans suicides, and the issue is further complicated by misgendering from family, friends, and police, which leads to unfathomable amounts of deaths going unknown. And for those of you that don't know, misgendering is when you say to a transgender person who identifies for example, as female, a trans woman, and you say, well, he's got some great makeup on, or it's like, what's your boy name? It's all kind of putting words against one's identified gender that they are self-identifying by. The article further reports that there were 31 suicides within the last year reported on. Quote, "It is in my opinion that what we are seeing is a huge spike not in suicides, but in awareness of them, as well as long overdue public discourse." On this show, we previously recorded on a number of suicides, but particularly of Leela Alcorn, and it spurred some national debate about transgender reparative therapy, as I was mentioning earlier, to kind of try to convince somebody to be a boy. It's like if somebody were to say to me, Kaiya, you aren't a woman, you should be the man that God made you to be, and get a wife and be happy and all that jazz. But it's an oversimplification of these cultural identifications and implications that we should be what other people want us to be. And I promote people being the way that they want to be, so long as it's not harmful to society. Kate Lafitte, a young trans woman who is studying engineering at UNC Charlotte, recently committed suicide. Her death isn't plastered on thousands of news sites or blogs. There was no hashtag her name was Kate campaign on social media, no beautiful artwork of her floating around on Tumblr, no photos of her on any trans remembrance pages, and after she had died, there was no national dialogue on how her suicide or other potential trans suicides could have been prevented. This suicide and many more have happened. This is not to mention a number of transgender deaths, murders that have happened, a lot of which, 200 of which happened last year in Brazil, which is one of the most dangerous countries in the world to be transgender. Next on the list, we have from BuzzFeed.com, Dominic Holden writes, transgender woman stabbed to death in Philadelphia. London Chanel, a 21-year-old transgender woman, was stabbed to death in North Philadelphia early Monday, a city official told BuzzFeed News. Chanel is the 8th transgender woman of color killed in the United States this year, a trend that anti-violence advocates have called an epidemic. And as in many of the cases, Chanel was misgendered in early reports. Quote, society is finally beginning to recognize that trans women of color are victimized and murdered at astounding rates. Fitzpatrick said, we just have far too many individuals who are dying too young at the hands of violence. The 7 other confirmed homicides of transgender women of color in the U.S. this year include a victim using the name Poppy Edwards, who was shot January 9th in Kentucky, Christina Gomez Reinwald, who was found in her home February 15th in Miami-Dade County, Penny Proud, who was shot February 10th in New Orleans, Taja Gabrielle de Jesus, who was stabbed February 1st in San Francisco, Yasmin Payne, who was stabbed January 21st in Los Angeles, Ty Underwood, who was shot January 24th in Texas, and Lamia Beard, who died of gunshot wounds January 17th in Virginia. This is from Dominic Holden on BuzzFeed.com. Transgender woman stabbed to death in Philadelphia. And the hardest part about reading this stuff is, no, I'm not trying to glorify this. I'm not trying to encourage anybody. I'm just letting you know that this stuff does happen. I know we can all kind of get into a bubble and say, hey, well, this doesn't really happen. People can live however they want. I don't necessarily agree with them. But it's what's the big deal? Why do you need to be telling us about who you are and what you do and how you identify? I read this stuff because it happens, and the transgender community is less than 1% of the entire community, and 1 in 15,000 people are transgender. And my community, the transgender community, to see so many people dying, to see so many people attempting suicide, to see so many people getting killed, it's pretty atrocious. So if you are transgender and you are or questioning your gender or feeling like suicidal, the number for the Trans Lifeline is, are you ready for it? The Trans Suicide Lifeline is 877-565-8860 in the United States. The Trans Lifeline hotline number, again, is 877-565-8860. If you're listening to this in Canada, that number is 877-330-6366. Again, for Canada, it's 877-330-6366. The Trans Lifeline is based out of San Francisco and was crowdfunded and put together by a lot of wonderful, caring people who are just trying to create another resource. And you are not alone. There are a lot of resources out there. In fact, if you have any questions yourself for me, you can tweet us at The Queer Life, or you can visit thequeerlife.org/contact and shoot us an email. And I'll try to get back to you and get you some resources available on there as well. Again, this is one show, and I am one person, but together we are many and we are strong. And I'm just trying to share this stuff with you just to give you a little bit more perspective here. Next we have on the list here is a little bit more California specific from Alyssa Walker on Gizmodo.com, learning from Australia's drought lessons to avoid a Mad Max future. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the commercials out there for the new film Mad Max, starring Charlize Theron, who is completely awesome. Sorry, that's a lot of my perspective there, but she kind of kicks butt. But anyhow, she Mad Max previously with Mel Gibson in the old films, it's in the deserts and everybody's driving their cars around and there's no water and stuff, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of California, which, as in case you didn't notice, it's bone dry out there, to quote the anger interpreter for Obama. If you haven't seen that, you should probably Google it. The drought is no longer a California problem. The Colorado River, which supplies water to 1/8 of the country's population, is reporting record low water levels due to over-allocation. The U.S. needs a little perspective when it comes to how bad this is going to get. Luckily, we have one. Australia. Over the past 20 years, Australia has weathered one of the most devastating droughts on the planet. You've seen the dust storms, you've seen the wildfires, and you've seen the trailer for Mad Max Fury Road. This is not a plug. The film takes place in a parched, near-future Australia, where the control and manipulation of water is the greatest power in the world. And water is indeed powerful. It shaped the caverns, the canyons of the Grand Canyon, and is formed the glaciers of the world, which are slowly eroding due to global warming here. Yay, science. Australia's Millennium Drought is named because it started around the turn of the millennium, but it could also be seen as a once-in-a-millennium event. It's said to be the worst drought in the continent's recorded history. The country's naturally arid climate always sees a great deal of variability in precipitation, but starting in the early 1990s, the country began to see much lower than average rainfall year after year. By 1995, an official drought was declared with the lowest annual rainfall seen in 100 years or more. Exacerbating the dry conditions were high temperatures triggered by El Nino, the very same weather pattern that's making the west of the U.S. so hot and dry right now. Some major reservoirs shrunk to 25% of capacity or lower. As we all have heard 1,000 times this year, curbing municipal use is a very small part of the water puzzle. Still, Australia began with some impressive cutbacks in this area. Cities launched programs to promote conservation like stormwater capture, grey water recycling, and rain barrel incentives for homeowners. Quote, indoor use only water restrictions went into effect for the cities of Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. Melbourne, in particular, was able to reduce daily per capita water use by 43%. What if we were to do that here in California here? The country then focused on investing $25 billion, yes, I said billion, as in B, as in boy, to strengthen the country's water infrastructure, building a water grid, much like how an electrical grid works. 3 desalination plants were built on the coast to service the cities of Perth, Melbourne, and Adelaide. But the important part about these plants were that they didn't simply supply water to the nearby city. They could be linked to other waterways, allowing water to travel back and forth as needed. A grid, just like our electrical systems, to transfer water from one city to the other. But the biggest impacts were seen through larger system improvements to the way water was managed. The National Water Plan for Water Security placed water projects under national oversight, and the federal government launched a reformed system to specifically change the way water was allocated, instead of hierarchical rights that dole out different amounts of water. Scientists make predictions about how much water will be available the next year, and everyone pays the same set market rate for water. This is Kaiya Kramer on the Queer Life Radio Show here on KBBF 89.1 FM. We will be right back after a short word from our sponsors. And again, you are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet us at The Queer Life or give us a call, 707-545-0318. That number again, 707-545-0318. You're listening to the Queer Life Radio Show.
This is KBBF 89.1 FM, Calistoga.
Esta es KBBF 89.1 FM Calistoga.
Can't afford a down payment on a home? Tired of renting? Do you and your family want a place to finally call your own? We'd like to tell you about an exciting home ownership opportunity through Burbank Housing. Catalina Town Homes is a 60-home community in an emerging neighborhood located less than a mile from downtown Santa Rosa and the Santa Rosa Marketplace. Catalina Town Homes is available to buyers who have not owned a home in the past 3 years, have good credit, steady income, and a desire to build a home and a community. Burbank Housing works with owners on the construction of their 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, so the homeowner's sweat equity counts as a $20,000 down payment. A lower fixed monthly payment means that you can predict your housing cost starting as low as $1,450 a month. Come discover Catalina Town Homes and everything our location has to offer. For applications and more information, visit www.catalinatownhomes.com or call us at 707-526-9782.
The Bilingual Broadcasting Foundation, the nonprofit governing body of KBBF Radio, is searching for a highly qualified person to assume the position of general manager. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. Please share this information widely. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website, once again, at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. The deadline for submitting applications is May 31st, 2015.
KBBF 89.1 FM, conquistando tu corazón.
All right. Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show. LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. I am your host, Kaiya Kramer, and this is episode 42. We're calling in gay to work tonight. I'm listening to the Queer Life Radio Show. The first article we talked about tonight was about calling in gay to work. The time Swedes called in gay to work by Shaughnessy Farrow on mentalfloss.com if you'd like to listen to that. And more of the earlier part of this show, you can visit thequeerlife.org. This episode is streaming live. Yes, I said live on Google Hangouts on Air, which you can find. You can subscribe. So we're on your phones, we're on your computers, we're in your coffee shops. I'm starting to sound like Big Brother or Big Sister. Whatever. Anyhow, we've got some interesting stuff going on over here for you. I was just tweeted by Transgender here. Breaking news. TLC Duggars, 19 kids and counting from lineup. Infamous superior bashing Duggars are using their baby show because of all things immorality. This article is written by Kelly Busey, editor of PlanetTransgender.com. It's not known if the Duggars have been permanently dropped, but judging by the stampede of advertisers canceling their support, it's pretty much a given. TLC has just pulled all airings of 19 Kids and Counting from its lineup, TMZ has learned. Sources familiar with the situation tell TMZ the fate of the show is uncertain, but there's now so much heat in the wake of Josh Duggar's molestation confession, the network had to make the decision. We're told they absolutely have not made a long-term decision, but it's clearly a bad sign for the show. And there's this. A rep for General Mills tells TMZ they have already blacklisted the show and removed it from their company's current advertising schedule. As we reported, TLC ran a Duggar marathon Thursday prominently featuring Josh. There was big backlash, not the least of which came from Mama June, who felt TLC was giving the Duggars a pass for far worse conduct than hers, which caused the TLC to pull the plug on Honey Boo Boo. This is from Kelly Busey on planettransgender.com. If you have any questions for us, feel free to tweet us at The Queer Life, which that's the @ If you don't know Twitter, then I advise that you get with the program. I'm just kidding here. Twitter is for those who like Twitter, and I know a lot of people are Instagramming, although I don't have an Instagram for The Queer Life. If you'd like to be our social media manager for The Queer Life, message us thequeerlife.org/contact and let us know that you are an Instagram guru and you'd love to document all of the happenings of The Queer Life. I know this is falling to a lot of people. Oh my gosh, there's so many social media platforms. There's so much going on. Anyway, next we have on the list here, Josh Middleton on PhillyMag.com writes, first federal bill to anti-LGBT conversion therapy introduced in Congress. Basically saying that the idea of being gay, being anti-LGBT is not going to work in terms of, as I was saying previously, the American Psychological Association says today Democratic Congressman Ted W. Lieu of California will introduce in Congress the first federal bill to ban LGBT conversion therapy. Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act. That is the Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act, that's a little bit of a mouthful, explains the Human Rights Campaign would amend the Federal Trade Commission Act to clarify that providing conversion therapy to any person in exchange for monetary compensation or advertising such services is an unfair or deceptive act or practice. This legislation would give the Federal Trade Commission the duty to enforce this provision in accordance with existing law. Quote, this vitally important legislation has the potential to save countless lives across this country by helping to end a practice that uses fear and shame to tell LGBT people the only way to find love or acceptance is to change the very nature of who they are, says HRC Government Affairs Director David Stacy. Quote, we're proud to work alongside Congressman Lieu and our partners to send a different message, a message of hope, acceptance, and love where such a demeaning and destructive practice isn't promoted as useful therapy. Ending this harmful profit-making practice is something that all of Congress should be able to rally behind. So far, 4 states have passed anti-LGBT conversion therapy bills, including California, Washington, D.C., Oregon, and New Jersey. These laws ban licensed professionals from administering, quote, reparative therapy on minors, but as HRC clarifies, the, quote, Federal Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act would prohibit conversion therapy in exchange for monetary compensation for all ages. If this is done for free, this could, in this case, still be done. Like I said before, conversion therapy or reparative therapy is basically therapy that convinces people to stop being gay or to stop being lesbian or to stop being transgender and lead the life that they were, quote unquote, supposed to live. Again, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Feel free to give us a call, 707-545-0318. If you're listening to this on a Friday, give us a call, 707-545-0318. Or you can tweet us at The Queer Life. Again, you're listening to The Queer Life Radio Show. I am your host, Kaiya Kramer. Next, we have on the list here is FBI admits no major cases cracked with Patriot Act snooping powers. Maggie Ibarra writes on WashingtonTimes.com. FBI agents can't point to any major terrorism cases they've cracked thanks to the key snooping powers in the Patriot Act. Do all of you remember the Patriot Act that was passed after September 11th? The Justice Department's Inspector General said in a report Thursday that could complicate efforts to keep any key parts of the law operating. Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz said that between 2004 and 2009, the FBI tripled its use of bulk collection under Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which allows government agents to compel businesses to turn over records and documents, and increasingly scooped up records of Americans who had no ties to official terrorism investigations. Yes, they are collecting records of people who had no ties to official terrorism investigations. It could be your data. It could be my data. It probably is some of my data. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm coming on here blathering on the radio about this. I might have to go flee to Russia. No, I'm sorry. I haven't leaked anything a la Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks, which we reported on previously. But I'm reporting on this because your privacy is something that is being debated right now in Congress, according to the new NSA laws, or the previous NSA laws in the Patriot Act, and gaining more traction to allow you to have rights and privacy. Because don't you want to have rights to your phone? Do you want somebody to be snooping on your phone? Now, there's probably not somebody just looking right at your phone, but computers are very complex, and algorithms are being performed to determine who you are, whether you're straight, whether you're gay, whether you make purchases at Safeway, whether you've been texting so-and-so, whether you've been going on Tinder.com. Yes, I know some of you have the Tinder app on your phone. Whether some of you are religious, whether you are anti-religious, whether you are anything. There's algorithms that are collecting all this data and putting it in a database which is searchable, like Google. Imagine like a little internal Google for the NSA to be like, okay, search for me all straight people in Santa Rosa who like Baskin-Robbins ice cream. I know that's kind of an oversimplification of it, but it's literally created a search query engine, a search engine, a Google for you and your data. And of course, this is not stuff that's available on the internet. You don't have to worry about just anybody going on there. And of course, this is certified, highly paid, and super secretive agents at the government levels, but this is happening. Section 215 of the Patriot Act is slated to expire at the end of this month. The House, in an overwhelming bipartisan vote, passed a bill to renew it, but also to limit it so the government could no longer do bulk collection, such as the NSA phone data program. That legislation is known as the USA Freedom Act. Quote, this report adds to the mounting evidence that Section 215 has done little to protect Americans and should be put to rest, said American Civil Liberties Union staff attorney Alex Abdo. And so these bulk data collections have been made of your data, and they haven't caught anybody with it. So why are they collecting it? I leave that up to you. If you have any questions or comments, tweet us at The Queer Life or visit us on thequeerlife.org and hit the contact button at the top of the page. And I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you're out there and you're listening, feel free to give us a call, 707-545-0318. Next we have here, and again, I know we're getting a little data heavy here, but this again affects us all. Hackers, in response to the new NSA laws, build a new Tor client, which is Tor stands for the Onion Router, by Patrick Howell O'Neill from Daily.com. With the threat of powerful intelligence agencies like the NSA looming large, researchers have built a new Tor client called Astoria, designed specifically to make eavesdropping harder for the world's richest, most aggressive, and most capable spies. Do images of James Bond come to mind, or do hackers, such as in the recent movie Black Hat, come to mind? I haven't seen it, so I actually probably shouldn't talk about it. Anyway, don't ruin the movie for me. Tor, the world's most popular anonymity network, works like this. A user fires up the client, which is a browser just like Firefox or Chrome, and connects to the network through what's called an entry node to reach a website anonymously. The user's internet traffic is then passed encrypted through a so-called middle relay and then an exit relay and back again. That user relay connection is called a circuit. The website on the receiving end doesn't know who is visiting, only that a faceless Tor user has connected. An eavesdropper shouldn't be able to know who the Tor user is either, thanks to the encrypted traffic being routed through 6,000 nodes in the network. This technology is used by reporters in certain countries that have a restriction of reporting and ensures the safety of some of these reporters or people making searches that are less than satisfactory, like in China or Russia or Syria or Uganda. But something called, quote, timing attacks changes the situation. When an adversary takes control of both the entry and exit relays, research shows they can potentially de-anonymize Tor users within minutes. I know some of you out there may have been using the Tor browser. I'm actually, very few people use the Tor browser. It's kind of still underground a little bit. It's used to reach websites such as the Silk Road, which is sort of like an Amazon for buying drugs. I know that's not the best way to use it, but you can get onto anonymous websites like Anonymous, where a lot of cyber kind of, quote, terrorism or activism, whichever side you're on, happens and is organized. A full 58% of Tor circuits are vulnerable to network-level attackers, such as the NSA or Britain's Government Communications Headquarters, the GCHQ, when they access popular websites, according to new research from American and Israeli academics. Chinese users are the most vulnerable of all these kinds of attacks, with researchers finding 85.7% of all Tor circuits from the country to be vulnerable. Even though Tor is designed to provide complete anonymity to its users, the NSA's position means they can potentially see and measure both traffic entering the Tor network and the traffic that comes out. When an intelligence agency can see both, simple statistics help an autonomous system at their control match the data up in a timing attack and discover the identity of the sender. Anonymity over. This kind of threat has been known to Tor developers for over a decade. They've been trying to make eavesdropping difficult for spy agencies for just as long. To counter the threat, American-Israeli researchers built Astoria, a new Tor client focused on defeating autonomous systems that can break Tor's anonymity. Astoria reduces the number of vulnerability circuits from 58% to 5.8%. The researchers say the new solution is the first designed to beat even the most recently proposed asymmetric correlation attacks on Tor. Designed to beat such attacks, Astoria differs most significantly from Tor's default client in how it selects the circuits that connect a user to the network and then to the outside internet. The tool at its foundation is an algorithm designed to more accurately predict attacks and then securely select relays that mitigate timing attack opportunities for top-tier adversaries. That is from Patrick Howell O'Neill on daily.com. Hackers build a new Tor client designed to beat the NSA. And I report on this stuff because I've said in previous shows, no matter who you are or how careful you are, if you've got something on the computer, it is potentially available to hackers and government agents who are in some ways maybe harvesting your data. I'm not trying to scare you to put all your stuff in file cabinets, because who wants to have racks and racks of file cabinets filling up their office unless absolutely necessary, you know. But it raises the question of our data security and how we should view data in this world, because the internet is largely insecure. So don't, make sure you have good passwords. I recommend the easiest way to make a good password is to put 3 words together that have nothing to do with each other, like public, refrigerator, and computer. And the time it would take for a hacker to be able to break into that would far exceed any time that they'd want to take to be hacking into your stuff. So because tools are pretty simple to acquire. Again, it's not like you can app on your phone that, there now are certain apps that allow you to break into Wi-Fi, but anyway, more on that later. Alan Clifton on forwardprogressives.com writes, Jeb Bush says same-sex couples can't provide loving families, believes in legalizing discrimination. After reading his newest comments, it's safe to say that Bush has firmly embedded himself in the tangled web of the evangelical Christian right, hoping to win over their votes while not giving a darn about equal rights. Not only did Bush say that he doesn't believe gay Americans should have the right to marry, but he basically said that they can't be loving parents or provide good families for children. Quote, I don't, but I'm not a lawyer, and clearly this has been accelerated at a warp pace, Bush said when asked if he thought marriage was a constitutional right. Quote, to imagine how we're going to succeed in our country unless we have committed family life, a child-centered family system is hard to imagine, he continued. Irrespective of the Supreme Court ruling, because they're going to decide whatever they decide, and I don't know what they're going to do, we need to be stalwart supporters of traditional marriage. If we want to create a right-to-rise society where people, particularly children, born in poverty, but if we want them to have a chance, we should be a core American value, Bush said. We have to restore committed, loving family life with a mom and a dad loving their children with their heart and soul, Jeb Bush said recently in a press conference when asked what he thought about marriage as a constitutional right. The Supreme Court, sometime in June, is going to be making a decision about whether gay marriage is a constitutional right. What do you think? Feel free to tweet us at The Queer Life or give us a call, 707-545-0318. Do you think gay marriage should be a constitutional right? I leave that up to you. From Judy Battalion on magazine.good.is, how to get over getting tired. This is Friday. I know it's a lot of people's weekend coming up. I know a lot of people also don't have Saturday and Sunday weekends, but for those that do, and those that just completed their finals this week at Santa Rosa Junior College and other colleges around the world, you may have time to get a break, but can you fall asleep? Are you an insomniac? Nobody sleeps enough. The search for slumber is now a collective obsession, the topic of many yawn-filled conversations, marketing campaigns, and headlines. Sleep deficiency causes fatal road accidents and is a costly drain on the workforce. Children suffer at school, moods are foul, brains are shrunk. While problems like ADHD, obesity, and bad skin used to be attributed to diet, new studies suggest they might be due to catching insufficient Z's, as in not getting enough sleep. Gone are the days of sheep counting. We've lethargically moved on to prescription pills and or essential oils. I know a lot of people are popping those little melatonin pills that you can get at Whole Foods, Whole Paycheck or whatever. You can also get them at grocery outlet cheaper. But we've moved on to this idea that I can't fall asleep, so I am going to be popping a pill, or taking a lot of antihistamine, which kind of does make you pretty drowsy. And it's kind of allergy season right now. Do you have trouble sleeping and you want to comment on this? Give us a call, 707-545-0318. If you're listening on Friday night. So much coffee and none of it really works, though. You're tired, you're drinking coffee, you're popping sleeping pills, you're making pills awake, and that's all that kind of stuff. But according to this author, that's when it hit me. Sleep as we know it, what I had always perceived to be an innate biological function, was actually a learned social habit. Sleep is political. Political? What? That's what they're saying here. Cultures around the globe sleep differently. In many Asian countries, co-sleeping among family members is the norm. Japanese parents and even grandparents often sleep near their children until they're teenagers, referring to this arrangement as a river. The parents are the banks. The child sleeping between them is the water. In New Guinea, it's common for men to sleep in sleep. Women and children are on their own. Mediterranean countries have afternoon siestas. In the United States, that's actually considered, what? You sleep in the afternoon? How dare you not be a 60-plus hour a week hard-working American? And America, and rights, and America, rights, because we're all so hardworking, we are hardworking. Is it so bad if your body, in many ways you have no control over, says to you, hey, you would probably be more productive if you went to sleep at 1 in the afternoon for an hour or took a 30-minute nap? Now, logically, that sounds like it might be kind of crazy talk here, but studies suggest that later starting school days, especially for adolescents, would encourage better rested and higher performing students. Imagine if school started at 11 o'clock and students had enough time to get some rest. Would they perform better on tests? Studies suggest that this is the truth. What do you think? I leave this up to you. Sam Stein on HuffingtonPost.com movements to make history. Then what? The gay rights movement is on the doorstep of history. Sometime in June, the Supreme Court, as I previously said, will issue a ruling on same-sex marriage. And the going bet is that at least 5 of the 9 justices will find same-sex marriage bans unconstitutional. Should that happen, it would be a milestone for a movement that just 1 decade ago was grappling with a series of setbacks on marriages in states across the country. And rights, LGBT bathroom rights, being able to marry your partner is legal in a lot of states right now, but that's what happens next once we get gay marriage as a constitutional right. What happens next? And like I've said previously before, if you're a trans woman and you are attracted to men and you have legally changed your gender on all your legal paperwork, you're actually, according gay marriage laws or not, you're actually allowed to marry. So this doesn't necessarily affect transgender people because it's not necessarily about sexuality. But and the same goes for transgender men, trans people who identify as men who are assigned female at birth. These guys here who, in some cases, are attracted to women and have legally changed their gender to male, they're allowed to marry despite gender laws. So gay marriage is not the end all here, and there is so much more work to be done. And it's all little stuff too, like equal rights in the workplace. I know this more equal employment opportunity, hiring organizations, but it's like saying to women, oh, well, women already have protections in the workplace. Why are you women still complaining, even though women statistically do get paid less than men in similar jobs, especially in the tech industry or in terms of managerial positions or CEO positions? Despite there being a huge number of percentages of universities, 60% of most high-end universities are women. But why is most of the leading workforce male? I leave those questions up to you, the listener here. Again, you are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. And we will be right back. I am your host, Kaiya Kramer, and we've got a couple words from your sponsors here. All right, we'll be right back for more stuff from the Queer Life Radio Show.
KBBF radio that motivates profound thoughts in children.
The Bible Foundation, the nonprofit governing body of KBBF Radio, is searching for a highly qualified person to assume the position of general manager. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. Please share this information widely. Requirements for the position are available on KBBF's website, once again, at www.kbbf-fm.org. Phone inquiries can be made to the office phone at 707-545-8833. The deadline for submitting applications is May 31st, 2015.
Desde Santa Rosa, para el norte de California, Brasil, KBBF 89.1 FM.
All right, everybody, I'm having too much fun in here. Gotta love the theme song for the crew. Anyhow, you are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. I am your host, Kaiya Kramer, and this is episode 42. We're calling in Gay to Work tonight. Sorry, I'm losing it a little bit here. And I'm here in the studio by myself here, and I'm just like, anyway. I have my audience here. And next we have on the list here is from LGBTQ Nation. Nation writes, Professor retracts study on same-sex marriage opinions following false data allegations. New York, citing irregularities on the part of his colleague, a prominent university has asked science to retract a study last year, ability of openly gay canvassers to shift voters' views towards support for same-sex marriage. Donald Green, who teaches political science at Columbia, requested the retraction Tuesday after the integrity of the data was called into question by 2 graduate students at the University of California, Berkeley, my alma mater, go Bears, who tried to launch a similar study. Quote, I am deeply embarrassed by this turn of events and apologized to the editors, reviewers, and readers of Science, Green wrote in a memo to Science magazine. He said his co-author, UCLA graduate assistant Michael LaCour, had been unable to produce the raw data that purportedly was used to come up with the study's findings. According to Green, LaCour said he accidentally deleted the data in question, which pertained to an online survey of voters targeted by the canvassers. Oh, well, looks like we got a call coming in right here, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, everybody. I was just informed by a listener here that a Saudi in Saudi Arabia there is an article from Christian Science Monitor about transgender children and growing up transgender. On this show, we've talked a number of times about transgender youth coming to their parents and their parents having been exposed to all the media savvy right now about transgender education, like this show in particular, they're coming out. So if you'd like to read more of that, the article is in Christian Science Monitor, which I will be looking for myself, and I'll probably be reporting on it next. That was brought in by a caller here. And again, if you have any questions or comments and you have stuff that you'd like to share and stuff that you think that should be brought to my attention, feel free to give us a call, 707-545-0318 if you're listening on a Friday night. Thank you so much for calling, caller. Next we have here on the list here from firstlook.org, Ryan Gallagher writes, Apple and Google just attended a confidential spy summit in a remote English mansion. At an 18th century mansion in England's countryside last week, current and former spy chiefs from 7 countries faced off with representatives from tech giants Apple and Google to discuss government surveillance in the aftermath of Edward Snowden's leaks on WikiLeaks. The 3-day conference, which took place behind closed doors and under strict rules about confidentiality, was aimed at debating the line between privacy and security. Among an extraordinary list of attendees were a host of current or former heads from spy agencies. Yes, I said spy, where there's a lot of spying going on right now, such as the CIA and British Electronic Surveillance Agency, Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ. Other current or former top spooks from Australia, Canada, France, Germany, and Sweden were also in attendance. Google, Apple, and telecommunications company Vodafone sent some of their senior policy and legal staff to the discussions, and a handful of academics and journalists were also present. Quote, perhaps to many participants' surprise, there was general agreement across board divides of opinion that Snowden, love him or hate him, had changed the landscape, and that change towards transparency, or at least translucency, in providing more information about intelligence activities affecting privacy was both overdue and necessary. In the aftermath of Snowden revelations showing extensive internet surveillance perpetrated by British and American spies and their allies, Google and other companies have reportedly become more resistant to government data requests. Google engineers were outraged by some of the disclosures and openly sent a big FU to the surveillance agencies while hardening Google's security. Meanwhile, Apple has expanded the range of data that's encrypted by default on iPhones, iPads, and Mac computers. And CEO Tim Cook has vowed never to give the government access to Apple servers, stating, quote, we all have a right to privacy. But the Ditchley event is a sign that, behind the scenes at least, a dialogue is beginning to open up between the tech giants and the spy agencies post-Snowden, and relations may be thawing. This is from Ryan Gallagher on firstlook.org. If you like this article and you want to look up more of these articles that I'm talking about on here, visit thequeerlife.org. This is episode 42. We're calling in gay to work today and listening to the Queer Life radio show. Also, you can watch us live on the interwebs as well and subscribe to our podcast and all the powers on the internet. But like I said, I understand that a lot of you out there don't have access to internet, and radio is just great. If you like this show, listen to us again Tuesday night on KBBF 89.1 FM from 9 to 11 p.m. We are rebroadcasting. If you like us even more, you can listen to us on KWTF 88.1 FM every Wednesday night from 6 to 8 p.m. on our syndication. Again, you are listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. Again, I am your host, Kaiya Kramer. We're reporting. We're all over the board here, reporting news type stuff and awesome. Anyway, yeah. Good times, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit off the rails here. Next, we have on the list here from Laura Gagel from livescience.com. Testosterone rules for women athletes are unfair, researchers argue. Elite women athletes are currently barred from competing in top-tier competitions such as the Olympic Games and World Championships if their testosterone levels are too high. But for women with naturally high levels, this regulation may be premature, as the only two large studies done on testosterone levels in professional athletes give conflicting results on how to define the normal levels for women, researchers argue in a new editorial. Now, as a trans woman, I do talk a lot about hormone levels, and the typical range for hormone levels for men, at least, testosterone is rated at between 250 and 1,000 parts per million of testosterone hormone in your body chemistry. And the typical estrogen for men is less than 50. It is somewhat reciprocal, though, when it comes to the state of estrogen and testosterone for women. And the typical ranges for your hormones for estrogen, if you are a woman, is between 200 and 400 parts per million. If you are higher or lower, then you could, if your estrogen is higher, you could be imbalanced. Too much estrogen actually gets turned into testosterone because your body kind of has a balancing mechanism to it. For women, though, your natural testosterone levels typically are less than 50. Have you had your hormone levels tested? Very few people have, but I highly recommend it. Have you noticed yourself feeling hormonal? It might be a saying that a lot of people say, but have you actually had your hormone levels tested? And it could be an indicator of what your psychological levels are, your well-being levels, your health. If you're getting hot flashes and you're 25 years old and you're a boy, maybe a small little test can let you know. Of course, everybody has different natural hormone levels, but that is part of the case. Most studies have found that men's levels of natural testosterone, also called T levels, are about 10 times higher than that of women's. Even the highest levels in women are still far below the lowest levels in men. 50 as in 250, that's like 1/5, you know. But if women were to have testosterone levels, and I look at this in terms of trans men, transgender men who inject testosterone into their bodies to allow them to have more masculine traits in their bodies, develop facial hair, they develop big muscles, and they can get, big biceps, and they can get strong because testosterone makes you strong. And reciprocally, a lack of testosterone makes lifting heavy things kind of difficult. So that's just kind of all a part of the shtick here. Despite the lack of data, the 2011 policy has already barred some women, such as Indian sprinter Duty Chand, from competing on the world stage. Men versus women are key physical differences explained. This policy excludes women with naturally high T from competing, said Katrina Karkazis, a co-author of the new editorial published online today, May 21st, in the journal Science, and a senior research scholar at the Stanford Center for Biomedical Ethics. Imagine being a woman your whole life, and all of a sudden you're told that even though you still are, and legally are, and you have all the legal documents, you can't compete as a woman anymore because your testosterone levels are too high. How would you feel about this? This is not about being transgender. This is not about anything. This is just you as a cisgender biological woman because your testosterone is too high. Should it be a result of testosterone? What is it? What makes a man? What makes a woman? And these are questions that are slowly being brought up and questioned to the degree that I bring this up as a trans woman. I've reported on the International Olympic Committee's policies for trans women who are competing, so long as they have the correct, you guessed it, hormone levels. If they're within the natural range for women and they've been taking hormone replacement therapy and they've had gender reassignment surgery, they can compete amongst other women. Organizations like CrossFit and their competitions say that you can't because it's they say once a man, always a man, but that's clearly not the case when it comes to hormone levels. Because if you're, on one hand, these guys say that if your hormone levels are too high, then even if you're a cis woman, you can't compete. But if you're a trans woman and you're within the normal range for hormones and you're competing at the highest level, should you be able to? These are all questions. Feel free to tweet us at The Queer Life or give us a call, 707-545-0318 every Friday night. The International Olympic Committee, after they tested the athletes' samples for growth hormones, the GH2000 researchers had enough fluid left over to measure the athletes' T levels. They found that 13% of women the women had T levels above the typical female range, and 4.7% of the women were even in the typical male range. 4.7 had male ranges of testosterone. Born female. Are they allowed to compete? I leave that question up to you, the listener, the audience, the faithful American. Well, I mean, you can anyway. And last we have on the show for tonight is from Beth Skwarecki on lifehacker.com. She writes, buying local honey won't help your allergies. Here's why. And I'm reading this because I've been telling a lot of people to eat bee pollen because I am apparently, I think I'm Dr. Oz now or something. I'm just kidding. I don't know anything about bee pollen. I don't know anything about allergies. I'm not a doctor, as I said in the beginning of this show. But Buying local honey won't help your allergies. Here's why. Allergy sufferers are often told to eat local honey. This builds up your tolerance to local pollen, the theory goes. It would make sense except for one inconvenient fact. Honey comes from flowers, and you aren't allergic to flower pollen. Flowers make sweet nectar to attract bees and other pollinators, and they also make big, sticky grains of pollen that will, with luck, stick to the bees' legs so that they can pollinate other flowers. It's true that honey, which bees make from the nectar, can contain trace amounts of this pollen. But this isn't the pollen you're allergic to. Check out the typical allergy offenders: ryegrass, maple, and oak, to name a few. These plants do make something that a botanist would consider a flower, but they're barely noticeable, not big, not colorful, not fragrant, not visited by bees. That's because these plants are wind pollinated, relying on breezes to bring masses out of their powdery pollen to faraway sexual partners. Not to gross you out, but pollen is basically plant sperm. It's this wind-carried pollen that you get accidental whiffs of, and it's small enough to irritate your nose and potentially trigger allergies. This explains why studies keep showing that honey doesn't help allergies. That's not to say that you shouldn't support your local beekeeping organization or beekeepers, because honey is pretty darn good for you. There's a ton of health effects for honey. And it's really good if you cut a grapefruit in half and put the honey on the grapefruit and eat it with a spoon. I love grapefruit and honey. Or put it on your Cheerios. Anyway, wow, we have reached the end of episode 42, Calling in Gay to Work. You've been listening to the Queer Life Radio Show, LGBT news, modern perspectives, roundtable discussions, and interviews. I am your host, Kaiya Kramer, and tune in again next week, every Friday night, 6 to 8 p.m. here on KBBF 89.1 FM, Calistoga, or visit thequeerlife.org for all episodes and all the above. Again, thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful night.